Hi everybody, welcome back. It's December 10th, which means we are about to have our 10th pour, our 10th whiskey from the Advent calendar. It's one that I really like. I think it makes, it's great for sipping neat, but also makes a very good old fashioned or a Manhattan. And today we are trying a rye whiskey called High West Double Rye. High West Distillery is in Park City, Utah. I don't know too much about them. They're a pretty small distillery compared to a lot of the ones that we've had so far. They make a lot of ryes, they do make some bourbons, and then they make some American whiskeys that you can't really call a bourbon or a rye, but they do some pretty cool stuff. And what I like about this rye, which is unusual for a lot of American whiskeys in general, is that it's a high malt rye, which means that it has a higher content of malted barley than most other ryes, most other American whiskeys do. You'll be able to taste the difference, especially if you compare it to something like that Knob Creek rye that we had before. I think you'll know what I mean when you take a taste. This is from sourced whiskey, meaning that they're getting these rye whiskeys from some other distillery. I'm not sure which, and it doesn't say where those whiskeys are from. Okay, so not really sure. Doesn't matter. This stuff's pretty good. And you might hear 2-year-old and think, oh my gosh, 2 years old. Maybe I didn't get to that part. Yeah, 2 years old. With ryes as opposed to bourbon, you're going to generally find that they're not aged as much. One reason, if you're a cynic, is because rye is a more expensive grain and you think, okay, they want to keep costs down at least a little bit, so they're going to hold on to that product for less time. That might be one reason. But rye also just generally, for whatever reason, I guess the chemistry of the distillate from rye grain, it doesn't take as long to take on a lot of the wood characteristics from the barrel as a like corn-based whiskey like a bourbon would. So for whatever reason, it just seems to not need as long to age well. So you're probably going to, you will end up seeing lower age statements on most ryes that you buy if you see an age statement at all. Okay, well, enough talking about this one. Let's pop this cork. Let's give it a pour, see how she does. Ooh, I like that. I like this bottle too. It's got little air bubbles in it that make it look all glistening. I feel like I'm gonna break it all the time, but it's cool. A little thin, feels different, and I like different. Oops, should probably measure this one so I'm not taking someone else's whiskey. All right. All right, give it a little bit of a swirl here too. Let's cork that guy. Spin, spin, spin. Spin, spin, spin. All right. Some people say you shouldn't be spinning your bourbons. You should just let it settle, wait. If you're going to move it gently. Whatever. I mean, I have not noticed a huge difference, or maybe more accurately, I've not cared to really find out if there's that big of a difference. Oh well. Yeah, so right off the bat, you smell this and you can tell there's a big difference between this and other ryes. And again, use that Knob Creek one as a point of reference, but it's almost like the first scent you get isn't the rye spice, that it's actually the malt. But this doesn't smell like a scotch by any means at all. And so it must be that malt combined with the rye that's turning it into something different. Very sweet, herbaceous, and then you get that rye spice at the end a little bit, but it's so softened. There's nothing biting to it on the nose. It doesn't get you or smell particularly spicy, but it's still there. Let's give it a taste. Sweet and really easy on the front palate. get it toward the back and the sides, and that's when that rye spice kicks in for me more on the palate than it did on the nose. Like this tastes like a rye. Like you're not fooling anyone. I don't think you would in pouring this, even though it does have a very different profile than a lot of ryes. That spice that gets you is pretty good, but it's not overwhelming me with any strong kind of classic rye notes. Like I'm not getting baking spice so far on this, like any like clove or cinnamon or anything like that. I'm not getting any piney or like minty sort of notes, no citrus or anything like that, which can sometimes come from rye, or like a dill. Yeah, it's gross sounding, but like no dill notes either. Nothing too strongly herbaceous or spicy. No pepper. But you still get that prickly kick on the back, and for me, it's almost like the malted barley kind of masks what are probably some of those spicy flavors a bit, where you can feel it, you get a hint of it, but for me, it's not enough that I can really put my finger on exactly what that flavor is. But I do really like this pour, and I really do recommend. This sounds like an insult, but giving this a try in a Manhattan or an old fashioned. I think a Manhattan in particular is really good with this. A Sazerac would be great too. Okay, so you like this. What do you go on to next? With High West, it's a little more difficult because they don't make a lot of stuff. Whether it's their own distillate, which they are using a lot more in some of their newer products, which I'll get to in a second, but it's a bit of a problem. Or whether it's distillate that they're sourcing from other places, they don't make a ton of whiskeys, and they make, as far as I know, only like 2 or 3 that are in the $40 or under price range. A lot of their stuff goes for a lot higher than that. For a long time, the best step up, if you wanted to get something that was pretty readily available, and that was really just a step up from the double rye, you would want to get the High West Rendezvous rye. And if you can find one that still has this sort of like old-timey, Old West sort of label, and you're willing to pay like $70 before tax, I think is what Rendezvous rye is, then get it. Because those bottles are going to be long gone pretty soon. Because what High West is doing now is instead of releasing the Rendezvous rye on an ongoing basis from places that they source those ryes from, they're now releasing it on a limited basis, I think only once a year, which could potentially drive up the price. And they're making it with a fair amount of their own distillate, which is kind of cool. A distillery, they're using their own stuff. They're trying to be a little more self-sustaining, so it's truly their product, not something they're sourcing from somewhere else. The problem is it's not that good. It's not as good as some of the stuff that they're sourcing. It's gotten really poor reviews, and you'll know the new bottle, the one that you should hesitate to buy or think hard about, that I'm not going to buy. It has like a really jaggedy, sort of artsy label. That doesn't look at all like this kind of old-timey, like a wanted poster from, a Tombstone or something like that. But if you're really interested, keep an eye out for that. They have crazy limited releases that you probably aren't going to find anywhere, but you might, like one called like a Burr Rye, which has like a rabbit with antlers on it. It's kind of odd. One called Yippee-Ki-Yay, which is a cowboy, on a bucking bronco with his hat. It's supposed to be really, really good. I really want to try that one. But I think they stopped making it, so it's pretty hard to find. But in a bit of a... So I'm going to go a different direction, because High West, it's going to be hard to find one of their products that I can really strongly recommend if you like this. So instead, what I'm going to recommend, if you like this, is malted high malt rye from a different distillery. And that's going to be the Old Forester rye. So we had the Old Forester 100 proof bourbon. There's also a newer Old Forester 100 proof rye, which is also a high malt rye. I've actually not tried it. I've heard good things. I've heard it's similar to this. It makes sense because of the ingredients. I think it also has a bit of that Brown-Forman, Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, even Jack Daniel's like banana-y scent to it. But it's supposed to be very, very good. For whatever reason, it is incredibly difficult to find in Washington State. I've only seen it a handful of times. and I was already over budget, I'm sure, for whiskey when I saw it, so I couldn't just pull the trigger and grab one, although I really want to. So you want to keep your eye out for an Old Forester bottle, probably in the rye section of wherever you're going. I don't think you'll find it in a grocery store, so it will be in a rye whiskey section, and it will look just like the other Old Forester we had, except there'll be a lot of green on it. Generally, whiskey makers use green to denote that their product is a rye. I don't know why, but you'll find that it's almost always the case. Well, there'll be like a green label, like on the Knob Creek 9, or excuse me, the Knob Creek rye that we had, and on this Old Forester one too. So if you like this, I first recommend you take a look for that Old Forester rye. If you're feeling a little spendy and you feel like taking a shot at it, go for the Rendezvous rye. I'm having a lot of trouble with that, particularly if you see it with the old label on it. Otherwise, purchase at your own risk. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you like this whiskey. I hope you like the video. I think it's more important that you like the whiskey, though. So cheers, and I will see you all tomorrow.